Welcome back to part 2 of How to Debate a Stratfordian. Advanced techniques. Okay, argument 1. Shakespeare never left England and his references to foreign countries are filled with goofy errors. For some reason, Stratfordians love to point out just how many mistakes Shakespeare made. Oh no, Shakespeare's so confused, he doesn't know anything, he's never left England, he's clueless. In nearly every case, Oxfordian researchers have investigated these errors and discovered that, unsurprisingly, Shakespeare was a highly accurate observer of his environment. For example, part of A Winter's Tale is paradoxically set on the coast of Bohemia, an old kingdom whose territory was landlocked, right? Stratfordians are like, oh, Bohemia doesn't have a coast. Shakespeare is a rube, just like we've told you. Not so fast. Edward De Vere traveled to Bohemia in the 1570s, and the Kingdom of Bohemia at that time did in fact control a coastal territory, which it would lose just 30 years later. Winter's Tale also contains the only reference Shakespeare makes to a contemporary artist, comparing a frozen woman to a sculpture created by Giulio Romano. Romano has been remembered by history as a painter, not a sculptor, and mainstream scholarship holds that Shakespeare must have made an error. According to a Stratfordian professor at the University of London, Shakespeare, quote, knew nothing about art, and in The Winter's Tale, when he speaks of a sculptor being that rare Italian master, Giulio Romano, he did not know that Giulio Romano was not a sculptor. How and where he came across that name, Lord only knows. But recent scholarship has unveiled that Romano in fact had a thriving sculpture studio in Mantua, which Edward De Vere may have visited during his well-documented travels through the region. Oxfordian scholar Michael Delahoyde at Washington State University has credited Romano's breakthroughs in perspective art with inspiring multiple passages in Shakespeare's works. Stratfordians have raised a variety of other quibbles relating to minute details of Italian geography and seafaring that Shakespeare supposedly got wrong. As Oxfordian researchers comb through archival records, the bard keeps racking up points, and the claim that he never set foot in Italy grows increasingly untenable. Shakespeare's verse poem Lucrece has a 200-line description of a mural of the Trojan War. This mural was painted on the walls of the guest room in the Ducal Palace of Mantua where Edward De Vere slept. And the beautiful floor mosaic of a cathedral in Siena demonstrates striking parallels to Shakespeare's iconic Seven Ages of Man speech. Argument 2. There's tons of documentary evidence that Will of Stratford wrote the plays. Anyone who denies this is a conspiracy theorist. While Will of Stratford certainly existed, and there's even evidence connecting him to the theater, one can only arrive at the conclusion that he wrote plays by jumping. Yes, we see that he owned shares in a theater company, and yes, he is mentioned on 3 cast lists as an actor, all of which were written by Ben Jonson as an in-joke or dog whistle, as we've covered. However, this was an era in which people kept journals and wrote letters, and not a single person ever recounts meeting a playwright named William Shakespeare. Will of Stratford's son-in-law, a doctor, keeps a diary and never once bothered to mention that his wife's father was the most famous writer in England. And as we have seen, theater producer Philip Helmslow's extensive records mention the titles of Shakespeare's plays, but never attribute them to an author. William Shakespeare offers a poetic image of a writer heroically brandishing his pen, and it also winks cheekily at the type of sexual innuendo that abounds throughout Shakespeare's plays. Simon Smelnave, Philip Foulface, Martin Mar Prelate. These are just some of the many pseudonyms that circulated on pamphlets during the Elizabethan period, which is still referred to by some scholars as the Golden Age of cryptography. Early publications of the bard's works, such as Shakespeare's sonnets, were published with a hyphen connecting the verb and noun of the last name, just as contemporary pseudonyms follow standard templates like Brooklyn Dad or Taylor Swift Fan 22. A common first name followed by a hyphenated last name would have been immediately recognizable in the 16th century as a pseudonym. We can understand William Shakespeare better by comparing him to modern-day anonymous creators, like the Italian novelist Elena Ferrante or conceptual graffiti artist Banksy. Another apt comparison might be Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, who has yet to be identified. A popular meme put forth the idea that Satoshi Nakamoto might be a portmanteau of 4 brands of cell phones: Samsung, Toshiba, Nakamichi, and Motorola. Argument 3. Nobody ever questioned who wrote Shakespeare until a bunch of classists got upset in the 19th century. Okay, there are countless allusions to the fact that Shakespeare was a pseudonym from the 16th and 17th centuries. Alexander Waugh has a great YouTube video series called So-and-So Knew, where he catalogs the many people who covertly signaled that they were in on the aristocracy's biggest open secret. So I recommend you checking them out if you want more information. In brief, The Art of English Poetry, published in 1590, lists Edward De Vere as first among a cohort of anonymous noblemen producing excellent poetry but, quote, loath to be known for their skill. A poem by John Davies refers to Shakespeare as, quote, our English Terence. Terence, the ancient Roman freed slave celebrated as a playwright, was known in his time to be the public face of an anonymous Roman consul. Terence's plays alluded cheekily to this arrangement, and this freed slave actually died when he was 25 years old, so it's pretty obvious that the plays were really written by the wealthy politician employing him. Ben Jonson's play Sogliardo, which I've discussed in other videos, seems to also satirize a financial relationship between Edward De Vere and Will of Stratford. The Stratfordian narrative is that nobody ever wondered who really wrote Shakespeare until a bunch of people with class prejudice in the 19th century. But even a cursory examination of Elizabethan England shows that this was a milieu in which anonymous writing abounded. That's part 2 of how to debate a Stratfordian. Keep practicing your moves and let me know how it goes in the comments. Like and follow for more, and check out the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship on their website for more resources on Edward De Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford.